But welcome to Oldham County Mission, and I pray that God blesses you each this morning. I pray that this is what God would have for you. I pray that it falls on your heart. I pray that it changes behavior. Candace and I heard someone make a statement this week about inspiration. If it's truly inspiration, it will inspire change in each of us. And so I pray that there is some inspiration this morning that might, if it's just a tweak. Remember reading the first, or one of the first business books I ever read. It was called Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard. And in this book, it ends with time for change. The last chapter was about change. And Blanchard suggested changing 1%. And I read that and I was almost let down, like, what a low goal. And his point was, if I tell you to change too much, it'll be so much you won't try anything. And so sometimes just a little quarter turn. I've always used, and it's a little outdated for even Ashley. I'm looking at from a certain stage and down, it might be outdated for you. But when I remember when Candace and I used to drive back and forth from Florida to Pittsburgh, we'd go into the mountains of West Virginia and we'd lose our radio stations. And we'd hit the knob and not even a quarter turn, just a centimeter of a turn, and the radio would come back clear. And so sometimes that's all it takes for us, just a little turn, boom, and we're clear again. So maybe if this is inspired, if it is from God and there is some inspiration, it'll inspire you all to make that little tiny turn so that you hear clearly and see clearly and are clear with the Lord again. This morning's sermon is entitled, Like It or Not, We're Alike. There's probably a couple key words there. First one is like it or not. And what I'm speaking to is sometimes it's hard to digest. Sometimes it's hard to receive a message, and especially one that asks you to do something. And so I don't know if you're going to like this statement. We, the second word I think that's important, or we're, the second important word is the pronoun we. And we means everybody. So when you look at television, or you look in your community, or you look in the newspaper, and you see different people who are less admirable, less likable, I'm telling you, we're all alike. And so I'm going to say the statement again with a different understanding now. Not just we in the peripheral, not just we within, with our doors shut and everyone else outside, and we feel this oneness and this unity. I mean everyone. Like it or not, we're alike, is our message today. The challenge, as I've kind of hinted at, the challenge with some sermons is they're for us. It's much easier to assign who should be listening. Oh, I wish so-and-so were here because this one was for him. Maybe the sermons are more for ourselves. And so having said that, like it or not, we'll apply that same phrase again. I first heard a statement in, I always say New York City, but I don't even know if we were on the island. We were going to my uncle's house, my Uncle George's house, and my dad stopped to gas up somewhere. I really don't know where it was, but I've always assigned this this memory to New York City. And we passed a group of people who were lesser thans. In my mind, I think of them as homeless, but I don't know them. But they were certainly lesser thans. And my mom used a phrase. I was in fourth grade at the time, or third grade at the time. She used a phrase I'd never heard before. And she said, "There, but by the grace of God, go I." And this thing fell on me. I thought, what does that mean? I told you last week, I confessed to you last week, my favorite question is why. Why did my mother say that? What does it mean? So I started to try to dissect it. I don't remember now if I asked my mom or if I came to a conclusion, but I now know, at age 63, I now know what it meant, and I think I found out then as well. And she was talking about the fact that this could easily be our condition. Now, I didn't know my parents' story at the time, but now that I know their story, about their starting point, about how poor they were when they left Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and went to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, I now know that really could have been their condition. There, but by the grace of God, certainly did go them. So now I understand that. But it's also a phrase that we use when we see someone in a condition and think, that could so easily be me. If not for God's grace, if not for his providence in my life, I could be found in that condition. So having said that, I want you to keep that in mind. There, but by the grace of God, go I. Keep that in your mind. Let it be rumbling in your head as we go through this. It's a statement of generosity. Hi, Nick. It's a statement of generosity. Hi, Jimmy. I didn't even say hi to you, too. It's a statement of generosity assigned to a people, but it's also a praise. Oh, thank you, Lord, for not letting me be them. Let me remind you what our subject today is. Like it or not, we're alike. And so even when we say that about someone, maybe it's a statement that we are alike, but it's also a statement that we're different. I want you to embrace the likeness that we have with all people. This theme also should be applied when you hear this phrase. Kids today, break, stop. Everyone regroup. Remember our theme today. Like it or not, we're alike. And so we may think the world is coming to an end because of the next generation. I hear that often. I heard that when I was young, and my parents, I'm certain, and heard their generation, heard it when they were young. It's always been said. You can find quotes like this, and I've looked these up before, hundreds of years back, maybe thousands, I don't know, but hundreds of years back, people have always looked at the next generation as the ruination of the world. Like it or not, we're alike. So when Jesus Christ speaks, why he's still relevant, it still applies to us, right? When he says, don't do this or do this, it still applies to us. So it speaks to our likeness. By the way, that's the trick that comedians understand. When comedians just spew jokes and you think, is everyone going to get it and the whole room roars? They're speaking to our likeness, not our difference. I'm going to tell you a story today, and I've probably told it before. It's one of my favorite stories. Probably told it before, maybe not in this context, certainly not in this context, actually. And it's a story I just love. I love the way it happens. I love the drama of it. I love the surprise ending of it. I love everything about this story. So I almost want you to I did this at a camp out once. I had the young people come up to the rostrum and sit on the ground around me. And I told a once upon a time kind of sermon to them. And I almost want to say, come and sit around me, because it's going to be a story I want to tell you. Once upon a time, there was a man named David. What I want you to there's an irony to this story, because we hear it and we immediately judge the subject, being David. And I want to remind you again what our theme is. Like it or not, we're alike. And so I want you to ask yourself as I tell this story, is this story about David specifically and only, or exclusively? Or is this story about all of us? Now, the details and specifics, I certainly don't believe it's assigned to many of us. But I do believe that this story is about all of us. So I want you to judge it and see. Story is not just about wanting. We all want things. It's not even about wanting more. We all want more, whatever it might be. I want more knowledge. I want more wisdom. I want more in my bank account. But it's about inappropriate wanting, even to the point of lusting. That's what this story is about. So I want you to hear it. And again, see if you find yourself or just yourself in this story. Jesus Christ warned us, gave good counsel and or warned us with this beautiful couple verses. It's found in Matthew, the 7th verse, 1st, 2nd, maybe even 3rd verses. I just know it's the first few verses of Matthew 7. And he says this, "Judge not that ye be not judged." And I think of a mirror when I hear this verse. Think of a mirror. Speaking into a mirror, as I judge Jimmy, put a mirror up because it's coming back at me. The reflection is coming back at me. "Judge not that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged." Now, we all have heard this. We all know this. We all might even use it against someone else. But I want you to truly hear this verse as if you're hearing it for the first time. What does that really mean? Because I find myself thinking about certain people, whoever they might be, usually not my people. And what I mean by that is people in my literal space, but more people who are untouchable on television, and I find safety in judging them without this verse applying. But I wonder if this verse applies completely. And that he's also saying, don't judge them. You don't know their story. When we all have a story, all of us. Sometimes I'll say that to Candace and she'll say back to me, you know, you're the only person who really thinks like that. But I try to factor in each situation. Where did they come from? What's their derivative? How were they brought up? Where's their pain level? And it's just too exhausting. It's too exhausting for most of us. So instead, we meet someone and they push against us and we turn away. Probably give no chance. And over the last couple months, we've heard story after story, whether it's Paul or whomever it is, of people that we may have struggled with. And yet the Lord calls them in, changes them completely, loves them as much as he loves us. I often say he loved me when I was most unlovable in July of 1976. But I don't provide that generosity to the person I'm judging in the moment. So, hear that counsel. He goes on to say, why behold the mote that's in thy brother's eye? The spot, the little mote, little spot. Why behold the mote that's in thy brother's eye, but considereth not the beam that's in your own eye? You're seeing their tiny little mistake, and you're filled with mistakes. And maybe that's why I do see the mote in his eye. It feels a lot better to point my finger at him and see his sin than identify my own. There is a verse, by the way, that speaks of judging righteously, and it's judging a situation. For behold, the Spirit of Christ is given to every man. I'm going to take the gender out of that so no one struggles. Given to every person. This is before you meet the Lord. This is, I believe, at birth. The Spirit of Christ is placed into every living person. It's the only way we find Christ. Because if we were left in our natural state, we would completely repel anything good. So he gives us his Spirit, a little bit of his Spirit in us. The Spirit of Christ is given to every person that he may know good from evil. Wherefore, I show you the way to judge. For everything which invites to do good and to persuade to believe in Christ is sent forth by the power and gift of Christ. Wherefore, you may know with a perfect knowledge it is of God. Judge situations, judge events, judge opportunities to receive God. That's what he's saying. Don't judge each other. So there's a man named David. And you know him as the slayer of Goliath, probably, more than anything else. There may not be a more interesting person in the Word of God than David. David means beloved. And again, I don't think I'm teaching you anything you don't already know. But the Lord loved David to the point of, for me, to the point of questioning. And again, that's judgment. Yes, he saw me at my worst and he loved me. But David, is how I think I often think. This guy had, they list 8 wives, and then there's a verse soon after that, I think it's in 2 Samuel, soon after that, and other wives. Oh, these are the greater wives. These 8, and they list them, are the greater wives. But then there's more. You haven't been to the 2nd floor yet. Wait till you meet those wives. And did I mention the concubines? Numerous, multitudes of concubines. For those living in 2021, girlfriends and such. David, beloved. Who is this guy? Who is this guy who seems to do anything he wants, yet the Lord loves him? And if you read Psalms and you read some of his beautiful writings, you know he's a man who understood a broken heart. He understood repentance. He understood the way back to God's presence. This is not an endorsement to anyone to live a sinful life and just say, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm telling you. I'm somewhat confused by the story of David. So please don't use this as excuse for new behavior in your life. But it's just, all I'm doing is repeating a history. That's all. David is king at this point, and he's wandering on top of his wall, wandering. I don't know what, maybe playing the harp and praising God. I don't know what he's doing in this moment. But he's on top of the wall, walking around his home, more than that, almost his region. And he must have heard the sound of water running, but because he looks down from his wall and he sees a woman bathing, Bathsheba, and falls immediately in lust. And then fulfills his lust with this woman. To the point that she becomes impregnated. And he has to fix this situation. Her husband is a soldier, and he's away from the city. And he's in battle. And David calls for him to come back. And he's so dedicated to his troops, to the cause, Uriah will not return back. David's plot was bring Uriah back, let him be with his wife, and we'll cover my sin. Uriah will now think he's the father, and David skates. But Uriah says no. Doesn't know that part of the story. No, I've got my men. I'm not coming back. So David thinks on. As lies happen, sometimes they start to snowball and they have to become bigger and bigger and bigger. So now he has to somehow fix this situation. He sends Uriah to battle, front line. And they go in, front line to a new battle. David decides where to send him, concocts this battle, and Uriah is killed. And David is relieved from the situation. I don't know what number she was, but he marries her. Come on in. Join the family. And everything's covered up, or seemingly. 2 Samuel, 12th chapter, first couple verses. Probably read a little more than I normally do, but I want you to follow this. 2 Samuel, the 12th chapter. And the Lord sent Nathan to David. And he being Nathan, came unto him being David, and said unto him, there were 2 men in one city, the rich one and the poor one. The rich man had exceeding flocks and herds. Interject in the place of flocks and herds, wives and concubines. And the poor man had nothing save one little ewe lamb. For the poor man, interject Uriah, and for the poor little lamb, interject Bathsheba. So you understand what we're talking about here, because David didn't. And it grew up together with him and with his children. It did eat of his own meat and drank of his own cup and lay in his bosom and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a trap. This lamb was loved. And what we learn from that right there is Uriah loved his wife. He had one wife, one little ewe lamb. That's all he had. This other man who had hundreds lusted after the little ewe lamb. There came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take his own flock and his own herd to dress for the wayfaring man that was come to him, but took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David, he's going to sacrifice this little ewe lamb in place of. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, as the Lord liveth, the man hath done this thing should surely die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing. And because he had no pity, filled with righteous indignation, says David. This should be corrected. The man should get 4 times what he lost. And the man should be put to death. Like it or not, we're alike. And David doesn't know this sermon yet. He doesn't understand the likeness of himself to the story Nathan is telling. I'm going to say it again. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold because he did this thing, because he hath no pity. And Nathan said to David, thou art the man. David, you didn't hear what I said. David, you didn't understand what I said. David, you didn't see the point. You didn't even understand why God sent me today, David. Thou art the man. You are the gluttonous man who stole the little ewe lamb. Not from need, not even from one, not even for one for more. Lusting for more. Lusting what you don't have, even though it's someone else's. And that's not even the purpose of this story to you all today. I'm telling you that when you see one another, whether it's in our congregations or on television or wherever it might be, and you find yourself filled with rage, righteous indignation maybe, and you see someone in their fault, remember this phrase, thou art the man. No, I never walked the wall and looked down and saw Bathsheba, but maybe somewhere I fit in this, in that I also carry mistakes and errors and sins. Who am I to cast any aspersions on anybody? And I would say this, expounding on that, expanding on that, driving that point home. Who are any of us to judge? I'll ask it this way, or say it this way. He that's without sin, let him cast the first stone. It's easy to find the fault. It's easy to see the mistakes. It's easy to see the mote, the speck in someone else's eye, in spite of the beam in my own. My brother-in-law, when he was so sick, his parents used to always tell him he'd get in and out of the car, and he was losing dexterity, and he could no longer control his body as well as he once did, as he was being ravaged by this disease. And they would say to him all the time, watch your head, as he was getting into the car. And in spite of his condition physically, he still had such a sharp wit. No matter who said to him, watch your head, he'd say the same response. He'd look up and look around and say, I can't watch my head. My eyes are in my head. How can I watch my head? How can I see the beam out of my eye? It's sticking out this way, so I don't search for it. I don't look for my faults. It's easier to see yours. And plus, when I identify my other faults, I'm now accountable for them. It's easier for me to name yours. I worry about this statement that's about to come out of my mouth, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's easier to hate than to love. There's much less commitment in hating than loving. Loving requires staying and helping. Hating requires pointing and mocking or speaking in self-righteousness or righteous indignation, as David did. He should be put to death, said David. Wonder if Nathan took pleasure or pain in saying, David, it's you. Thou art the man. It's you. I've been telling you a story about your walk. Like it or not, we're alike. All have come short of the glory of God. What that means is we're all at fault. Maybe some very obvious. Some fall so publicly. And some fall very privately, and no one knows. We have a tendency maybe to start ranking one another. My message today is not David. My message today is not exclusively that we're alike. My message today is love one another. If you see someone fall, pick them up. As we pass those people in New York City, or so I believe that's where we were, as we pass those people that I now believe were homeless, I don't know any of this as fact, but as we pass them, and my mother said, there but by the grace of God go I, they were outcasts. Understand, this car is not stopping to help. It's just to identify their condition and drive on, drive away, not just drive on, drive away. Because some of that, whatever that is, just might rub off on us. That's when we judge, that's what we do. We point. There, but by the grace of God go I. Maybe I am going there. Maybe that is where I am. Maybe the grace of God is allowing me to fall into my own situation. I don't know. But what I know is this. We love. We love because Jesus Christ loved. And if we're not loving, I would ask you, who's motivating whatever feeling you have in that moment? Because it's not the Lord. Another time, we were in Los Angeles, LA, and Candace had fallen asleep. I had a rental car and we were driving around town. Candace had fallen asleep. She awakened at probably 10 o'clock at night, and I was in the worst part of town, like the Bowery. Candace said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm seeing the city. Beautiful buildings like 5 blocks away, and I'm going down this street, and she was horrified. I just want to credit her with using good judgment. That's the judgment Mosiah was writing about. Good judgment. Judge a situation. This is not safe. Get us out of here. She wasn't judging these people as bad. She was judging us in danger. It's a whole different judgment, and I honor her today, saying, I think she was right, more right than I was that night. Similar situations to there by the grace of God go I. It's a lovely statement, but it's also a statement of separation. Church of Jesus Christ, love one another. This is the safest place to practice unconditional love. And it still may not feel safe. And I'm asking you to take that chance. Love one another. Find the goodness, even when the lack thereof is so much easier to identify. I so often think of what the Lord was confronted with. He hung on the cross beside a thief, beside two thieves, excuse me. And he didn't judge the action. He didn't judge the behavior of the past. He judged the condition of the present. One was still squirming on that cross. We don't deserve this. The other was a broken man. Lord, can you find anything in your heart to save such as one like me? I'm guilty as charged. I'm filthy. I've lived a life that's wrong, but I'm so sorry for this life I've lived. It's easy to judge based on the past. Ironically, it was David who was judged by Samuel. This is the beauty of this story, the perfect circular motion of the story of David. When he was just a shepherd, I think it used the phrase ruddy-faced, out in the field. Samuel came to call the future king, not based on present. And the brothers began to come in one after another. Is this the one? Not feeling it. Is this the one? Not feeling it. Is this all your sons? Well, there's one more, but I don't even want to bring him in. He kind of smells. He's among the sheep. He's filthy. He doesn't show any leadership. Bring him in here. He didn't say it this way, but maybe this is the first time these words were uttered. Thou art the man. Not negative, positive. You're the one being called by God. God sees you. Not based on your behavior, but clean your behavior up, by the way, if it needs to be. But based on the condition of your heart, based on the direction you want to take yourself. And just remind you, want isn't enough. Desire isn't enough. Follow that desire up with a change of behavior. Love more. Forgive more. When did the Lord love me most? When did he need to love me most? Or I wouldn't have come in when I was least lovable. Maybe that's who I should love. Those who are the most difficult to love. Those who don't deserve my love. I would just remind you that you're called to represent Jesus Christ. Paul calls us ambassadors. Ambassadors. An ambassador goes to a foreign land and represents that which he came from. This world should be a foreign land to you. You don't fit in. You represent something greater than where you dwell. You represent Jesus Christ. And I would ask you, are you representing? If I asked all of you, give me one word to describe Jesus Christ, you would describe forgiveness and love and mercy and generosity. You are ambassadors to those adjectives. You are ambassadors to the Son of God. In the absence of, the entire country cannot go to Cuba. The entire country cannot go to England. And so we send an ambassador. Jesus Christ is absent physically today. And so he sends you out into a land that's foreign. Stranger in a strange land. That's how he sends us. Am I loving like Jesus Christ would love? Are you loving like Jesus Christ would love? And if you struggle even to this moment with this message, I would just remind you this. Like it or not, we're all alike. May the Lord bless each one of you.